So to start, just some identities. This is a little blurry and I apologize. What is number 1? I think by now everyone should be able to recognize that and be able to use it. If not in that form, even in this form. What is that? Okay, what about this one? Secant squared is equal to the one with the... These two you should be, you should be able to do by now, and especially the two with their little sayings, like the one with the tan is what we seek, and the one with the coat is cozy. Remember, we can't use them if they're not, if we have like 1 plus tangent, we can't be using secant there. It has to be squared. That's why they're the Pythagorean identities, because the Pythagorean theorem uses squares. What about 3? What identity is that one? Cofunction. So who is cosine's cofunction? Okay, 1 minus sine squared. Good. Okay, 5. What kind of identities are those? Odd and even. Is sine odd or even? So what happens to the negative? Good. Cosecant. What is cosecant? 1 over sine. And then 7. I want you to really look at that one. That's cotangent. Could you be able to give me 3 names for cotangent? I want you to think about it. I think all of you would be able to give me 2. But try to see if you could give me 3 names for cotangent. So 1 is 1 over tan.
That's a big one, tan. Then,
what is it?
shut up, Ash.
Gabe? Or not Gabe? Yeah, Gabe? Yes. Yes, Gabe.
1 over, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I'm shocked. I didn't expect any of you to get that. Good job. Good job. So really, these identities, we've done so much practice in class. I have given you the flashcards on Schoology and all of this kind of stuff. I think by now you should be able to do it. And if you can't, then practice. I know it kind of stinks to practice, but it will help. Okay, so I made this sheet of a few important things to remember. So I'm going to hand it out, and we're going to fill it out together. I'm going to do some quick response stuff today. No, you do have a quiz, but not with the Centio.
What? I wasn't on Friday on that because I don't think we know Scalwar.
Ever. I know. Okay. So, your past 2 worksheets have asked for all solutions. Be careful when they ask for all solutions. They want it to be what? So let's say my answer was 60 degrees. If they ask for all solutions, this is what you need to have. Oh, so it has to match up though. You could say 2 pi n if you wrote your first part, pi over 3. Okay? I'm just reminding, this is for all solutions. If it doesn't give you an interval, that's what they're looking for. Is there questions on that? We covered this on Thursday. We did some on Friday. And now this is review. It's not actually anything really new. It's just adding that on to your solutions that you get. And then a new thing I mentioned on Friday, but some people were gone, is when we find solutions for tangent and cotangent. And I'm going to use an example from our notes, or from our worksheets. And I'm going to use, worksheet E 1C. If you want to get there, this is going to be an example for what I'm talking about here. So, this problem asks us to find all the solutions in the interval 0 to 2 pi. So to do that, I'm going to first subtract over that tan x. Now, what does this term have and this term have in common? Tangent x. So I'm going to factor that out. And then if I'm trying to find all solutions in the interval, what do I do next? Set it equal to 0. So first, I'm going to set tangent of x equal to 0. So I'm trying to find, where is tangent of x equal to 0? Or y equals 0. So, would it be here? No, because that would be 1 over 0, which is undefined. What about here? Negative 1 over 0, so not those two. It would be here and here, at 0 and pi. So 0 and pi are two of our answers. But now this is where it gets tricky, and you have to be careful when working on these problems. Let's look at sine squared of x minus 1. And again, we're trying to find solutions. So we end up getting that sine of x is equal to 1 and negative 1. I did that by subtracting over the 1, or adding the 1 over, and then taking the square root. The square root of 1 is just 1, and when you take the square root, it's plus and minus, right? So now, where is sine of x equal to 1? What is up there? Pi over 2? Does everyone see that? Sine of x is equal to 1 at pi over 2. Do you agree? Okay. What is tangent of pi over 2? Here's tangent. What is that? It's undefined. So, even though it's a solution to this, we can't use it because it's not a solution to tangent of x. And then tangent of, sine is negative 1 at 3 pi over 2. What is tangent of 3 pi over 2? Undefined. Shh. So we can't use that one. So moral of the story for this little hint I gave you is if you're working with tangent, you can't have answers from pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2. And if it's cotangent, what do you think your answers can't be? 0 and pi. So write that down. That is key. If someone has a question on that, ask it now. I want to make sure that's clear. I mentioned this on Friday, so this is somewhat of a review from Friday. It's just making sure that the only time you really have to look out for this is if you're working with tangent and cotangent. If you're working with sine and cosine, then just don't worry about it. But if you see tangent and cotangent, make sure that you don't get, for tangent, you don't get one of these answers. And for cotangent, you don't get one of these. Okay. The next thing I have. When finding the solutions for equations, some may be out of the range of sine and cosine. So some of the problems we've been working on, I've noticed that some, like, you might get sine of theta is equal to negative 2. Do you remember last unit, the range of sine? Isn't that the range of sine? Does this fit in the range of sine? No. So this wouldn't give us the solution. If that's still confusing to you and you forgot that from last unit, think of this as 2 over 1 and try to make a triangle. Can you have a triangle with length 1 and hypotenuse, or length 2 and hypotenuse 1? No, it's like impossible. So that makes sense. There's a few on your homework that are like that. Lastly, just some hints. Try to make sure your answers are not in fraction form. Try to get them out of fraction form if possible. And then first we talk about looking for things being squared and see if we can use the Pythagorean identity. Second, try to change things into sine and cosine. Almost always that will help is to change things into sine and cosine. Has this sheet been helpful? I think these are the little things that you might forget on your test. That's why I pointed them out. Especially this one, forgetting that they're undefined, and this, when they say all solutions. So if they don't give you an interval, look to write something like this. Okay. The steps. The steps we use when trying to find or simplify. We said first we need to look at squares. Sometimes it might be helpful to use a Pythagorean identity. Sometimes it might not to be, right? Second, what do we do? Sine and cosine. And then the third one, which isn't really always a third step, is I forget is to factor. So if you run it, if you look at squares, do something, do sines and cosines and you're stuck, see if you can factor, because you might be able to. I think that's where some people get stuck is factoring. Okay. So the co-function identities, these are co-partners. So if we have sine, what is sine equal to? What about cosecant of pi over 2? Secant. And then you can flip these, right? And then the last one is tangent. Any questions on those? Yeah. And then turn on your Centio because the next one is a Centio question.
Just like one problem you have?
I have a few.
Mine just says 2B.
Yeah, 2B.
2B.
Oh, you have 2A. But then you're wrong.
Oh.
I got 2A, so maybe I'm right. Oh, I got it wrong.
Okay. Can I change it, Caitlin? Okay. Here it is.
Oh, yeah, did everybody send you a turn off? Yep. It's my class. It's got to go to the arrows going across the screen. Yeah.
Clickers can be turned on.
Concerned for your health right now. I feel like I was going to die this morning. I really don't trust anything that I can drink from my friends. So wait, 2. Yeah, definitely. How big is it? Yeah, no, because you're supposed to dilute it with water. Look at the whole thing. Are you sure it was? Maybe you're just one of those people that thinks they're high, but they're not. They do it for caffeine. You get deep.
Still waiting on a few more.
Oh, I didn't see it. There we go. Well, you blocked it. Oh, it's not there. Yeah, no. I thought the girl was like, mine's not. I can block that.
Has everyone answered? Or no? Okay. So waiting on 3.
Are you sure it was
Okay, everyone's answered. Let's go over it. Well, first of all, I need to unfreeze. 91% of you got it. Cool.
It's kind of an A minus.
So this is probably one of the easier ones that you're going to see. Cosine's copartner. And then tangent. Nothing else is being squared, so let's break it up into sine and cosine. If we bring up the denominator, it's multiplying. And we're left with cosine of x. Questions? You'll never be asked, well, I shouldn't say never, but more than likely you won't be asked to come up with this. You'll just be asked to figure out what its co-function identity partner is. That makes sense. Okay, odd and even functions. What are the two trig identities that are odd?
Sine and tangent.
Sine and tan. So if sine is negative in the inside, sine's evil twin, cosecant x. Tangent, if it's negative on the inside,
Negative on the other side.
and the same for cotangent. What's our even? Cosine. What's different about cosine and sine and tangent? Yes. And its evil twin? Yes. That's what I get for going so fast. Any questions on these? Oh, wait. Another centio. Yes, the recording's kind of covering it down there. Oops, didn't freeze. Oh, did I not? Can you answer it? Sorry. Okay, now you can start.
I got you right. Off the walls right now. It's not 1,000 milligrams. Yeah, dude. I will pull it up. I'll pull it up for you. I will. I have one bar.
No, I did agriculture.
Quite a while.
Two is easy.
That was not available.
It was like, no,
Oh, I have a bar.
two, because you can do movable type,
I'll let you pull it up.
astrolobe, and
I don't have any.
caravan.
So I can't pull it up.
Okay, 3 people still have to answer. One more. Good. 91% for this one. Okay, so if you still don't know these, just practice. Sine is odd, so what happens to the negative? It stays. Cosecant is whose evil twin? Shh. And since sine's negative, cosecant's also negative. Well, these cancel, but a negative times a negative. So B. Questions on odd and even? Yes. Good question. Odd functions are symmetrical around the origin. That's symmetrical around the origin, right? Sine is also symmetrical around the origin. If you rotate it, symmetrical around the origin. That's why they're odd and even. And even functions are symmetrical around the y-axis. Knowing that won't really help you understand that part, though. That's just a matter of, well, I guess you could. Also for cosine, if you have cosine up here and you change it to negative, it's the same. If you go over the x-axis, cosine's still positive, whether you're up here or down here. Sine and tangent goes from positive to, or it changes. Okay, so finding solutions, we already kind of talked about this. Some of them just ask you to find it in an interval, and some of them ask you to find all solutions, and we talked about that. Yes, Aaron?
Yeah, can you go over what is all solutions mean? Well, I don't get the end part. I was gone on Friday.
N is like an integer. So how many times, we talked about this Thursday actually, but N is an integer, how many times you go around. So let's say one of my answers is 60 degrees, and that's 60.
Yeah.
So I would say 60 plus 360 degrees N. Because from here, no matter how many times with 360 I go around, it's going to be a solution to this answer.
Oh, I get it.
Okay? So this one I want you to do, but there's no problem. But this one wants you to find in this interval. So you're not trying to find all solutions. And the problem is, so we're not simplifying, we're solving because it's an equation. Now I should be able to enter it in. It wasn't working. Two more people. One more. Okay, let's look at it. So, this one we still need a little practice on. So,
What is the answer?
the answer? Why is it not just A or just C? Sine and cosine are positive in two areas. Same with tangent. So if you see something like this, you need to realize that you're going to have two solutions because it's positive in two areas. Why isn't it this one? Yeah, it gives you an interval. So they're not really wanting all solutions for how many times you go around n. So but let's look at what this looks like. So sine of theta is root 3 over 2. So I'm a unit circle. I drew a triangle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. The side opposite of root 3 is 60 degrees. So that's one of my solutions. Where else is sine positive in quadrant 1, 2, or 3, or 4? 2. So we know this is still a 60-degree angle. To find that, we can say 180 minus 60, which is 120. Questions? Yes.
I got that, but I just thought about it. For this test, will we need to do anything with the range? Because I thought about it as 120 wouldn't be the range of sine.
So that's the angle measure, though. The 120 is the angle measure, so it is in the range. When you're worried about the range is when you're taking the inverse of something. That is the only, that's not the only time, but that's the time when you're going to think, oh, is this in the range? And usually you see it with a -2 or 2, and you know, I guess most of us probably know by now that just by looking at that, it's not possible. That's a good question. Because we're finding degree measure here, and all these degree measures are in the range. We know that we can find that degree measure. Good question. Other questions? Other questions?
You guys find a time where we take this test?
A week from Friday. Okay, so now finding all solutions, and that's when I said you have to do either 360n or 2 pi n. So one more Centio question, and I have to write it up here. And it is, please try hard on this, because if you can do this, I think you can. Cosine x. We're doing Centio stuff. A few more.
Exactly. You have to position yourself in a way that's not like embarrassing, but then like.
I would have already died. The worst part's over.
Okay. So this one was a little bit of a struggle. So 62%. So right away I could eliminate this because it's not all solutions, and then this. But let's figure out how we would do this. What do I need to do first? Factor. So I get 2 cosine. When I factored out, I got 2 cosine x plus 1 and cosine x plus 1. Remember, if this is hard for you to factor, just think 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. Factor that and then put in the cosines. So now we have to find the solutions for when 2 cosine x plus 1 equals 0. We get cosine x equals -1/2. So we're trying to find where is cosine equal to -1/2. Cosine's negative in 2 spots, right? Where is it negative? Second and third. So we draw a triangle there. And so it's adjacent over hypotenuse. So what degree measure is that? 60. But it's not 60, it's 180 minus 60, which is, so there's 1. And then 180 plus 60, 240. So we found those 2 answers. We found when cosine was equal to -1/2. Now we got to do this part. So when cosine is equal to -1, there's 1 spot, and where's that? So D. Questions about that? Any questions? Okay, so this is pretty much what you had to do on homework. I think, was it D, E, and F, or E and F? So keep working on these and look for when they say all solutions or in the interval. Then we're going to end with the, yes, Ann? Yeah. So we're done with Centio. You can put the Centio away, and we're going to take a mini quiz, and then the rest of the hours, your free time to work. The quiz is tough.